We left Bulgaria in tears. We all left Bulgaria with tears in our eyes.
The chief of Bulgaria love Bulgaria because the Bulgarian people love the Jews.
I am sure that the Bulgarian proved that there was a way to stand up against the Germans.
Bulgaria, a small European country nestling in the Balkans, a pro-Nazi kingdom during World War II. Its government made a pact with the Third Reich, but its people struggled to avoid sending the Jews to their deaths. A unique episode, an unknown story, an extraordinary saga.
People started to cry. They cried and began singing Bulgarian songs, as if saying goodbye.
In March 1941, Bulgaria signed a military treaty with Nazi Germany and became its ally. In order to guarantee the deal that the Bulgarians would enter this pact, Hitler persuaded the Romanian government to return the fertile Dobruja region that Bulgaria lost after World War I. Dobruja was returned to Bulgaria, and the agreement with Germany was signed. In March 1941, the German army entered Bulgaria, using it as a springboard from which to attack Greece and Yugoslavia. The German victory was swift and complete. The Bulgarians were promptly rewarded. Germany ripped Thrace away from Greece and Macedonia from Yugoslavia, and placed both regions under Bulgarian control. Thus, with Dobruja annexed to Bulgaria and Thrace and Macedonia firmly under its control, Bulgaria was swept up by a surge of enthusiasm and patriotism. The Bulgarian parliament cheered the Prime Minister after he proclaimed the establishment of Greater Bulgaria. The pro-Nazi organizations that had emerged in Bulgaria celebrated. Streets throughout the country were named after Hitler and Mussolini. Boris III, King of Bulgaria, who authorized the Prime Minister to sign the agreement with Germany, was now referred to as King Unifier. On January the 23rd, 1941, Bulgaria adopted the Law for the Defense of the Nation, an anti-Jewish law modeled after the Nazi racial laws.
Bulgaria knew very well that if they wanted something from Germany, they had to give something in return. So even before Bulgaria was asked by the Nazis to do anything about the Jews, they did it on their own will. They promulgated the Law for the Defense of the Nation, which was actually a very close copy of the Nuremberg racial laws against the Jews. It implied that the Jews should wear a yellow patch. Actually, it was a very small yellow star, which was the smallest in Europe. There were signs placed on Jewish houses, signs placed on Jewish businesses. There was a curfew imposed upon the Jews. They couldn't exert quite a few professions. They could not be doctors, they couldn't own industries, they couldn't own land. There were a lot of restrictions against the Jews. Most of them were carried out, quite a few were not.
The Law for the Defense of the Nation would leave a stain on Bulgaria. Hundreds of telegrams and letters began to pour in, to the Prime Minister, to the Speaker of Parliament, to ministers and to other government leaders in Sofia. This tidal wave of protest was massive and unrelenting. It came from all walks of life. The Writers' Society, the Doctors' Union, the Bar Association, groups of artists, textile workers, carpenters, the Merchants' Union, the Shoemakers' Guild, railroad employees, residents of Sofia's 3rd district, leaders of the Bulgarian Church, Communist Party activists, even farmers from Bulgaria's heartland. they all dispatched strong-worded petitions to cabinet ministers and members of parliament.
On that day, when the law came out, I was in 12th grade, the last year in our high school. My father took me to school so I wouldn't be embarrassed. For the first time, I had to wear the Jewish star. When school was over, two of my classmates asked me, "Annie, how are you getting home?" And I told them I was going the same way. "Oh, we just happened to be going that way too." And so one was on one side and the other on the other, and they walked me all the way home.
The hardest part was how to enter my class. How do I go in? On purpose, I came a little late, just a little, so that no one would be left out in the yard and I wouldn't feel embarrassed. Then once everyone is inside, I could go in. So I went to school, entered the classroom, and was shocked. My entire class was standing, and though I was the only Jew in the class, everyone was standing, wearing a yellow star on their shirts. They made them out of a yellow pumpkin.
My father owned a men's clothing store in Sofia, and since the law for the defense of the nation set a limit on the number of stores Jews could own, he had to give it up to a Bulgarian within a certain specified amount of time. Now, he managed, through some friends, to get in touch with a Bulgarian whom we had never met before, who was interested in having this certain kind of a store. And so my father passed on the store to him, with all the merchandise, without any inventory or signing any sort of an agreement, nothing. Then, what was a real mystery for me was that every beginning of the month, my father would go to the train station during the hours that we Jews were allowed out on the streets, and he would meet this Bulgarian there, and they would go to a quiet corner. The man would slip some money in my dad's pocket and return back to Sofia on the next train.
So I was working for a man called Boris Jelev. When I wore the yellow star to work, he'd say, "Take it off. Here, I'll watch out for you. Take it off."
I do not think that the Germans had a very strong influence on the Bulgarian society. How shall I say, give their the anti-Semitism onto the Bulgarian society. I don't think they had much success in that, no.
רק לאחר המלחמה, כשראינו סרטים ויומנים, מה קרה במזרח אירופה.
Only when the war was over and we saw films about what happened to the Jews in Eastern and Western Europe, and we saw the big yellow star they had to wear that was made out of cloth that was attached to their clothing, only then did we realize our cute little yellow star button was actually bearable.
Despite the open and unprecedented public opposition to the anti-Semitic law, Sofia's heads of government continued to tighten the oppressive measures against the Jews. In the summer of 1941, the Bulgarian government established a special commissariat for Jewish affairs. Its purpose was to deal with the Jewish question and enforce the harsh provisions of the law for the defense of the nation. The headquarters of the commissariat were based in a requisitioned building walking distance from the parliament in Sofia. Its 120 employees were under the command of Alexander Belev, a young lawyer and a rising star in Bulgarian politics. The Germans could not have asked for a better servant.
On March 6, 1943, a man called Velkov arrived at Kyustendil. This man was one of the higher-ranked officials from the Commissariat of Jewish Affairs. This man came to organize and to arrange for the eviction of the Jews and then storing them in the tobacco warehouses.
Kyustendil. a small city about 80 kilometers from Sofia, located in the center of a rural part of southeastern Bulgaria. This pleasant city, lush with greenery, a cross between a small European town and a Bulgarian village, came to be known as Bulgaria's fruit orchard.
Velkov
went to Mikhail Abadjiev, a lawyer, with a demand to give him the authority over all the tobacco warehouses. Abadjiev told him he couldn't unless he told him why. They had an argument, and then finally Velkov revealed that in a few days Bulgarian Jews, at first 20,000, were going to be sent to Poland, to the concentration camps.
By March 1943, Nazi Germany had already succeeded in destroying over half of the Jews of Europe within the framework of what was called the final solution. 4 million Jews from all over Europe were sent to the German death camps, most of which were established in Poland. Polish and Russian Jews were slaughtered wherever they lived. Jews from Germany, Austria, Czechoslovakia, Holland, Belgium and France were deported to Poland and massacred in the death camps of Chełmno, Belzec, Sobibor and Treblinka. Upon completion of the huge gas chambers and crematoria at Auschwitz, the German death machine went into high gear and the death industry reached its terribly efficient climax.
Abadjiev החזיק את הסוד בליבו.
Abadjiev kept the secret, but he couldn't bear it for long, since he had a very dear friend, my brother, Buko Lazarov.
Mikhail
Abadjiev searched for a way to tell my brother in which to reveal the terrible news. He invited all his friends, including my brother and his wife Anka, to a party in his house. And at the party, after everyone was there, he took my brother aside and told him that he was asked to clear out the tobacco warehouses in order to temporarily store the Jews there until they'd be sent off to the concentration camps. My brother felt terrible. He anxiously waited for the party to end because he couldn't tell anyone there the terrible news. It was late at night. There was a curfew for the Jews and we weren't allowed out in the streets for any reason after 9 o'clock. My brother ignored the restriction, and after midnight, out he went to Buko Konfortov, the chairman of the Jewish community. They discussed their options for immediate action. There was no time.
Alexander Belev learned first-hand of the Nazi secret plans for the destruction of the Jews. In January of 1942 he was sent to Berlin where the Wannsee Conference convened to decide on the implementation of the final solution to the Jewish problem. And so several months later, the German foreign minister instructed his staff to begin sending the Jews of Hungary, Denmark and Bulgaria to their deaths. The Bulgarian Interior Minister, Peter Gabrowski, authorized the deportation to Poland of the Thracian and Macedonian Jews who had been denied Bulgarian citizenship. Adolf Eichmann sent Obersturmführer Theodor Dannecker, an SS officer responsible for the murder of some 700,000 Jews in Europe, to Sofia. On February 22, 1943, the first document outlining how the final solution would be implemented in this region was typed at the headquarters of the Commissariat for Jewish Affairs in Sofia. It was a unique agreement signed by Alexander Belev on behalf of Bulgaria and by Obersturmführer Theodor Dannecker for Germany. This agreement was the only one ever signed between Nazi Germany and another country concerning the deportation of Jews to death camps in Poland.
Dannecker had already quite a record of sending the Jews from other countries in Europe to their deaths. He came to Bulgaria and he met with Belev knowing that Bulgaria would not object to the deportation of the Jews from Thrace and Macedonia, whose number was about 12,000. And then Belev told Dannecker, why take 12,000? Why shouldn't we round the figure, make it 20,000? And we shall give you 8,000 Jews from all Bulgaria. Now there was a very dramatic moment, because the original agreement spoke only about sending the Jews from Thrace and Macedonia, from the new Bulgarian territories. And when they signed the agreement, Belev struck out the line saying Thrace and Macedonia. So the agreement was about sending, in the first stage, 20,000 Jews. And right away, preparations started in order to deport all these Jews.
One morning, on the way to school with my backpack, like always, a Bulgarian soldier yelled, "Go back home, there's no school today." After I got home, my friend Izzy, who lived next door, pardon me, this is very emotional for me. He said, "Sachko, the Germans are going to get us. The Germans are going to kill us." Then I looked out the window and we saw many people in camps of 2 or 3 coming from the direction of the Jewish quarter, and they looked terrified, crying, horrified.
On March the 11th, 1943, at 4 in the morning, they knocked loudly on the door. We were expecting something to happen, and when we opened the door, they told us to go out quickly. We were going to work. We went out. It was raining heavily, rain and snow. It was terribly cold. We stayed outside for about 4 hours. At around 8:30, we started walking. We got to the train station, and when we got there, we heard the mayor yelling at his men to search for the gold. Search everything, find it, beat them. Don't be afraid to beat them. The train started to move. It was already dark.
A few weeks after the start of the expulsion campaign, death transports of Thracian and Macedonian Jews arrived at Treblinka. 11,343 men, women and children were killed by asphyxiation in gas chambers in the German death camp located on Polish soil. The Jews of Kyustendil were among the 8,000 Jews of old Bulgaria that Belev included in his first expulsion plan.
On March 7th, rumors began to spread about the deportation of Jews from Thrace and Macedonia, and that we might be next. On the 8th, someone said that at night a train came through the Kyustendil train station, that from the cattle cars people were screaming, "Bread, water."
Early in the morning, very early, the Jewish committee of Kyustendil met in the synagogue. My brother called for immediate action to be taken. They decided to organize a group of distinguished non-Jewish community leaders. The head of the group was Peter Michalov, who was a friend of my brother. They used to live in the same house.
My father was a member of the Jewish committee in Kyustendil, and he was very aware of what was going on. There was a leak that the trains were at the stations and ready, and the warehouses were cleared and ready, and that we were going to be taken within 24 hours.
Public figures from Kyustendil refused to remain indifferent to these events. In less than 48 hours, a group organized in the town determined to act on behalf of the Jews.
One day, my husband met at the town square Buku Lazarov, who broke down crying and said they will arrest all the Jews and put them in Fernandez tobacco warehouse. My husband told them not to worry and that he was going to Sofia and will take care of it.
Една вечер пристигна една доста внушителна делегация. Те се промъкнаха.
That night, a large delegation came to our house. They got through somehow, although they were not allowed on the streets. They didn't come up to the second floor. They stayed downstairs and talked with my father. I, a curious child, listened from the top of the stairs. They asked my father to put together a group of prominent citizens from Kyustendil that would go to Sofia and try to do something about it.
Arsen Svichmezov, a businessman, Vladimir Kurtev, a politician, Ivan Momchilov, a lawyer, and Peter Mikhalev, a parliamentarian, were the 4 Bulgarians who formed the Kyustendil delegation. They left from the same railway station at which the infamous death train had already arrived. Unswayed by the dangers inherent in their decision, the 4 men boarded the last train to Sofia late in the evening. Their goal was to meet with Dimitar Peshev, the highest Kyustendil representative in the capital, a former Minister of Justice now serving as Deputy Chairman of the Bulgarian Parliament. The following morning, the 4 made their way to Peshev's Sofia apartment. The expulsion of the Jews of Bulgaria was to begin the evening of that very day, March 9th. The Kyustendil mission had less than 12 hours to achieve the impossible, make the government cancel the expulsion order.
Peshev learned about the forthcoming deportation only in the morning of the deportation day. At the beginning, he did not believe. He said, I would have known about it. How come there is such a plan and me not knowing about it? But when he learned about it, he decided to act immediately.
In his diary concerning the events of that day, Peshev wrote, "The first thing that had to be done immediately was to meet the Minister of the Interior, who was responsible for Jewish affairs, and to make him understand that we could not accept the measures being taken against the Jews, and that we would take steps against these measures." The Minister of the Interior, Gabrovsky, was in the Parliament building that day. I could not keep silent concerning such important events affecting the present as well as the future. Silence went against my conscience. I felt responsible for everything that was happening. A criminal act from a legal and moral standpoint was about to be committed, and I decided to act. The Minister of the Interior agreed to Peshev's urgent request and met him in his office. Peshev told him of the information he had received. The minister firmly denied the existence of any plan to expel the Jews of Kyustendil or other Jews from Bulgaria. Time was running out. Peshev hurried back to his office to make an urgent phone call to the governor of the Kyustendil region. The governor confirmed that he had received a secret order to arrest Jewish residents and detain them in the tobacco warehouses next to the railway station.
On March 9th, we woke up in the morning. Father went to the synagogue, leaving instructions for me and my mother how to pack our luggage.
At home, we knew pretty early that something was about to happen. The entire Jewish community in Kyustendil started preparing for the trip to the camps. They started packing big bags, big knapsacks full of clothes and food for the journey.
The panic was huge.